Well, I feel lucky because I remember when it happened, we all wanted to be there. I was out in San Francisco at the time and clear across the country, and all of us in the FBI, and probably most of us in general, felt helpless, like you wanted to do something. We were assigned to the Staten Island landfill, but what we were assigned to in particular is they were putting the debris from the buildings from Ground Zero on barges and taking them over to the Staten Island landfill, brought it over there, and then we were essentially sifting through debris from the World Trade Center and pulling out anything that could identify a victim.
Hey guys, this is Coach K, and you're listening to the Making Changes, Breaking Barriers podcast, where we talk about you. This is about you, your mind, and your path. So as you can see, this is another guest episode. We have Cora back on the podcast, which I'm very, very excited for. And I think all of you guys really enjoyed having Cora on here the first time around. We also have a few other guests that I'm very, very excited to introduce to you all. Laura and Lisa have been married for 10 years and have been together for 16 years. They live here in Bend, Oregon, which is where we all met and became friends. They spend their free time similarly to how we do, hiking, skiing, walking around town with their 2 doodle dogs and socializing. So I'm very, very excited to have them on the podcast and, just share with you all a little bit more about their lives and some of the awesome things that they've done, because they have done a lot of awesome things. So with that being said, I'm just going to give a little bit of a bio for both of them, and then we will bring them in and get right to it. So Laura grew up in the foothills of California. She is now a successful website designer here in Bend, and her work adventures have really always focused around the arts and the outdoors. From touring as a singer-songwriter, which I'm really excited to talk about, and to owning a retail sporting goods shop, she's really had her hand in a lot of things. And then about Lisa, she retired from the FBI in 2019 after serving 24 years as a special agent in both San Francisco and Portland divisions. As a special agent, Lisa worked a variety of violations to include white-collar crimes, crimes against children, and counterintelligence. Additionally, Lisa was a member of the FBI's evidence response team, processing major federal crime scenes to include the World Trade Center's Ground Zero following 9/11. And before all of that, Lisa was already a badass because she was a Division I collegiate athlete playing volleyball at the University of Florida, where she earned a Bachelor's of Science degree in exercise physiology. So, long story short, Laura and Lisa are totally a power couple, and Cora and I are very grateful to have them in our lives and as friends, and also as role models for what it looks like to be in a healthy relationship as 2 powerful, successful, and fun-loving women. So, with all that being said, hi, Laura and Lisa. How are you guys? How are you feeling?
Doing good.
Doing good.
We sound so interesting from the intro. I want to know us.
Yeah, don't let us down on all the following questions, you guys. So, just kind of want your guys' input or story on how we met. Obviously there's a little bit of an age gap between us, right? One of you's already retired. But how that kind of friendship clicked, the things that made sense and kind of why it works for us now as new friends, but established friends.
Well, gosh, we met a couple of years ago now. And see, here I go. I'm going to jump in and answer every question. We met a couple of years ago, and through a mutual friend, and she was our real estate agent at the time. She was yours, and she just has a way of connecting people who she thinks might get along. So you guys came over, and we clicked immediately with you, and I think it's somewhat about just when you meet normal, authentic people. It's
interests.
With similar interests. It's easy.
Dogs in the outdoor.
The doodles. Actually, forget all of the rest. It was the doodles.
That could be.
I think that's why we clicked. Yeah.
What I find interesting too is we do have so many similar interests. But actually, Cora and I were talking about this the other day. most of the time when we're getting together over dinner for a dinner party and a bottle of wine. It's like, what the heck? Why aren't we ever going skiing together or hiking together?
Yeah, I was actually
about that.
I was going to say that. It's like, oh, well, you meet people who like the outdoors and doing things. It's like, but we never do that. So we never do it together. But someday we
will.
Let's make it a priority.
Yes.
I guess, Lisa, we've gone mountain biking together, and you and Cora have gone mountain biking, so done that.
It was like a bait and switch. It was right at the beginning, didn't you
It
guys
was.
do mountain biking? It was like, yeah, let's go mountain biking. And then now
Never
let's just
again.
eat and drink.
I think that those dinner parties are just so much fun,
They're
and
so
we all
much
really
fun.
love talking together so much, so we just keep doing that over and over
Yeah.
again.
Yeah.
Well, Laura, I want to first, talk about you and your background a little bit more. So you had this dream of being a singer-songwriter. Is that right? Is that something you kind of always dreamed about as a kid?
No.
No. Okay.
Actually, so actually how the songwriting thing started was a little bit different. How it actually became a career was a little bit different. I started playing music maybe when I was 10. My mom was a country western singer, and she taught me how to play guitar. And songwriting was very much just like journaling for me. It just became how I got everything out. So I was writing songs from the time I was like maybe 13 through my teenage years, through high school. When I was about a junior in high school, my mom kind of recognized that my songs were good, and she thought it would be a good way for me to make some money when I was in college, is selling songs. And so she brought a recording of me, a little cassette. You guys probably don't know what cassettes are.
Oh, stop.
Just little things.
I knew one of
Google
these
that
jokes was
later.
coming. I knew one was coming.
But she brought a cassette to a local studio, and they were at that time transitioning to become an independent record label. And they immediately said they wanted to sign me as their first artist. So that completely obviously changed the trajectory of what I was planning on doing. I was going to be going to art school, and instead I started recording my first CD, also something you might not know very, very well. But
We know CDs.
Okay. I recorded my first CD and started touring. So that's what I did from 17 until I opened.
Okay, so I was completely wrong. It really wasn't a dream. It was something
No.
more that fell into your lap almost.
Yeah, it
I would
was
say.
an opportunity. And that's,
Yeah.
that everything in my life, it's been just about recognizing and accepting opportunities that come. And so that was an opportunity. And for me, it was kind of an important, I don't think anything happens by accident, because I was painfully shy. I know it's hard for you guys to believe, but going on the road and actually having to get on stage every night and sing to people, and also singing your own songs. Sometimes it's wonderful. You're at a festival and singing, and people are listening, and sometimes you're in a little club and nobody's listening. So that sort of experience, I think, actually kind of laid groundwork for being able to do the other things that I've done in life.
You talked about opportunities. What is it your dad said about opportunities?
Just always take every
Yes.
opportunity.
Pretty much. I think you
Yeah,
kind of hammered
it's like
that into
his
you.
deathbed words was just take every opportunity that comes in life.
Yeah.
So music was that.
How old were you when you were actually touring?
I started recording the first album when I was 17. I started touring when I was maybe just before I was 19. And then I released 2 CDs with that label. And then by my mid-20s, when I was 24, I had an opportunity to buy into a sporting goods store that was starting up in my hometown. And that was another opportunity. And at that time, the music business is for someone who is a homebody, who likes to have roots and be home. It's not a great gig because you are gone constantly, late nights. And I was recognizing also it's difficult to make a living. You're making all of your money in the late spring and summer and early fall. late fall, winter, early spring, you have no money, no income, so you have to do something else. And so that was not how I wanted to spend my life. And I don't know that I had, I might have had a gift with it, but I don't think I had the drive or the determination to make it work. By the end, it was really my record company who, was kind of pushing the wheel. Music was always for me, songwriting is for me. It still is. So, it actually felt better not doing it, for other people. But I say that, but it was also an incredibly special, like 5 years of my life, or more, because of everything it gave me and the confidence it gave me. And, learning about, you're kind of thrown in from, high school, you like learning a lot about rejection, learning a lot about successes, learning a lot about people and yourself. So I'm really, really thankful for that whole opportunity.
Yeah, I feel like you touched on something that's really interesting there, in that, someone may think, okay, well, if you're a musician, well, isn't the thing that you would want to do is play in front of hundreds of thousands of people or hundreds of people or whatever? And that may just not always be the case. And it sounds like that's kind of something that you learned about yourself through that process, even though it was, like you said, amazing and something that's really awesome to look back on. But
yeah, it was just kind of knowing when to stop. And I think that you're right. I think a lot of times the artists are not necessarily there. And this is a huge generalization, and I'm not one to speak for all artists, but a lot of times, particularly songwriters, are very introspective, and so it's not an easy thing to go out and put that out for everybody, and especially with the rejections you get. And I think, it leads into a whole different conversation, but I think you often see performers turning to alcohol or drugs or things that make that a little easier to handle. And, that was never something that I was into, but I could see if I had kept going down that road, that I probably would have needed some numbing factor.
I was actually this kind of leads me into this next question, but I was going to ask about those festivals that you played at. I'm sure that was quite the atmosphere to be a part of, and
it was cool. It was, and I started when I started doing music, I was kind of in the folk scene and doing small sets at some of the folk festivals and playing at the small folk clubs, mainly on the West Coast. But when I was 19, 20, by the time I started working on my second album, my sexuality had already come into play at that point. And so I made a really deliberate switch and started focusing on the women's circuit. And again, that's not, not to bring up your age again, but that's, that doesn't really exist anymore. But when I was young, a 20-year-old lesbian, particularly growing up in the foothills, there was there was women's music festivals, there were women's clubs. It was a whole circuit because we needed venues where there were like-minded people, because it wasn't something that you just, I don't want to say we're out with, because I was always fairly out, but, it felt like the right place. It felt like home to be in that sort of environment with the women's music festivals. So that was fun for me. I did, again, festivals that don't exist, National Women's Music Festival, Cat Fest, music festivals in New Mexico, Arizona, California, and was starting to kind of get a name for myself on that scene, when the opportunity doing something more stable came up.
Why don't we have those festivals anymore? That sounds like a ton of fun. I mean,
they are fun, but they're just not needed. I don't think they're needed in the same way that they were needed at that time. That was the early 90s, and there were just not a lot of safe spaces. I mean, you remember that time. It was Like,
yeah, I mean, they're not needed in the same way. I mean, there aren't a lot of specifically gay bars or things like that anymore because we can thankfully go anywhere.
yeah,
You
we can
know,
be ourselves anywhere. But, back
back
then
not
you
so
could
much.
not be yourself
Yeah.
anywhere, not safely. And actually in the early 90s, there had been so much progress made from the 80s, 70s. So, I looked at it as I knew a lot of women when I was touring in the women's music festival scene. You met a lot of the pioneers, women's music, their experience of being lesbian so different than mine in the 90s. And now it's the same.
So, do you feel like it was hard for you to leave that part of the scene because you had kind of been building and been a part of this community, and then you were, leaving it for a more stable opportunity? But was that hard at all and part of your decision?
I think that the hardest part of me leaving music was that I loved hearing other women singing, singer-songwriters, women and men singer-songwriters. I love other people, hearing what other people have to say through music. And that was difficult, just not being a part of that. It's funny because for the first probably 10 years after I stopped doing music, I didn't miss being on stage. I didn't miss I didn't even hardly play music anymore, actually, for a decade or so after I stopped. But I really didn't miss hearing other people sing and sitting in intimate songwriting circles and sharing music, and which was one of the reasons we started the house concert series.
Lisa, did you ever hear Laura's songs like when you were growing up or anything?
Oh, no. I didn't. No, I mean,
She grew up in Texas.
Well,
You were in Florida by then.
well, I think the first I became aware of your songs, or that you even had songs, was after we met. And at that time, I mean, she did give me a couple of CDs. It wasn't like now where she wasn't streaming on iTunes,
Yeah.
right? I mean, that wasn't a thing.
Yeah.
So you gave me a couple of CDs from your early music.
And I wasn't, I was starting to gain some notoriety in that circle, but that circle is a small circle.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like, it wasn't like people knew me over. It was a
It's
very
not like
small
today
following
when artists get a following because
on
of the
YouTube.
internet.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, social
Yeah.
media, was it even a thing when you?
Oh God, no.
It wasn't. I mean, there was no.
I mean,
Facebook
the
or-
internet really started in full force around 94. And so we were just starting to kind of get the word out in that way via the internet.
She was having to do it the hard way, word of mouth through people who had heard her going to festivals. Then people would hear her and buy her music. But it wasn't like today. It would be interesting to know how it would be.
I know it would be actually fun. I
would be.
think that sometimes when I see a young songwriter, and they put out a video,
They give you exposure. Like, no.
it's like you can put it out,
Yeah.
and if it gets, if it's something that's worth listening to, it can spread really quickly, and you can get 100,000 fans like this. That wasn't
Yeah, if it
something
goes
you did.
viral.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, in my day, going viral was like, 10 people signed up on my mailing list after a show. It's completely different.
I
So,
think when we met, I didn't even know that you had been a singer-songwriter.
I didn't talk
you
about
worked
that.
at recording goods shop,
Yeah.
and I had no idea.
Yeah.
For a while.
Yeah, it was a surprise.
Yeah.
Hopefully a good one.
It was a pleasant surprise.
Yeah, well, there's definitely some big negatives when it comes to social media, but that's definitely a positive, right? Someone can put their creation, their work, their life's work out there, and it can
Blast it out.
spread. It can spread like wildfire very quickly.
Right.
Obviously, that's not the case for everyone. You have to get a little bit lucky, and you also have to be good at what you do. But you do have that possibility, which is really cool. And I want to bring it back to our earlier conversation about when we first met, because that very first time we met, which was at your guys' house for that dinner party, you broke out your guitar and you sang a couple songs, and that
with
was
Tommy.
Yeah, with Tommy, and that was the first time we had, ever met you guys and ever heard you sing, and I was blown away. I thought it was awesome, to the point where, then I asked you to do a house concert for me for my birthday, which you did, which was really, really awesome. So
Now Christina's your record label, forcing you to perform.
Right. No, it's nice. I can't say that it's not flattering, or when somebody hears my music and likes my music, because that's, one of the things about doing music that professionally is your ego gets fed a lot when you're on stage and you're getting that kind of, adoration, even on a small level. That's really kind of a cool thing. So that, like, not doing music, I didn't get that anymore. So Christina, you're the first, fan I've had since the 90s. So I appreciate it.
I love it. Well, and to feed your ego even more, Lindsay and Courtney actually brought this up randomly maybe a couple weeks ago now, and they were saying that they've listened to your Christmas song that you sent like a bunch of times, even since Christmas, and they absolutely love it as well. So you have a few fans.
Nice. That's
At least
good to
a
know.
few fans.
All right, that's
maybe
enough
we can
ego
get it.
stroking.
Maybe, yeah.
Just kidding.
I want to get this going on social media.
Here's your chance.
I see a career change coming.
Well, you're the website designer. Put your website together. I'll link it on the post,
Okay,
and there we go. 100,000 fans by overnight.
You're gonna sell all
perfect.
those remaining CDs so fast.
Yeah.
I think we do have a box of them.
I think we might.
Yeah.
We might. But Lisa's been wanting to get rid of those, so that'd be great.
I want one.
We
She's
might
like,
be able to
what is
arrange
this box
that.
still doing in the garage? No.
Exactly. I just can't throw it away. It's myself.
Yeah.
It's my heart.
Well, just to fast forward a few years here, you obviously now own your own business and design websites for people here in Bend, but also people everywhere, right? It's not just people in Bend, right?
Yeah, no, it's everywhere.
Yeah.
It's
So-
nice though. I really value the Bend. Whenever I've lived in a community that I've had the website business, I love working with people in that community. So when I was in the foothills, I loved my local clients. I loved them in the Bay Area when I was there, and I loved them in Bend. I love to see that growing.
Yeah, so how did you get into website design? I mean, I know that there was an in-between step there from singer-songwriting to this, but...
Well, the sporting goods store was actually a pretty big in-between step there, because I did that from the time I was 24 to 35. So it was 11 years. And that gave me, just like music had given me a lot of skills, having a business with really talented business partners gave me a lot of skills as well. So at the time, I had a friend who, she did all the marketing for big companies like FTD and Bowflex, and she said I had done all the marketing for my retail store, all the catalogs, all the internet stuff, everything, and she thought that I had a gift with design. And she said, if you could learn Flash was a technology in the mid 2000s.
If you say so.
Yeah, it was. She said, if you could learn Flash, I would give you an advertising campaign for Bowflex and FTD, which that was a huge, to be able to do that would have launched my business. But at the time I didn't know anything about Flash. So I just went to school, basically, and
School
taught
meeting by yourself
Yeah,
and your
for literally 20 hours a day,
Yeah.
learning
Wow.
and becoming good at Flash, because you can't just learn it. You have to be good at it if you're going to do a national campaign for a big company like Bowflex. And so I did ads for them, and they turned out great. And then I was able, through that, to have a portfolio and started getting clients locally, because people knew I had already done websites. I'd been working in web since 94 when it started. And at that time you could look at the source code of any website and you could see exactly how it worked, which isn't the case anymore because there's so many different components to it. But I had done websites over the years for the sporting goods stores, for friends who had businesses. So it was a very easy transition. Once I gained the skills, the Flash software, it was a very easy transition to really learning HTML and PHP and CSS, and just started building my business that way, kind of organically. But it grew fast.
So just another opportunity, like you mentioned before, that was presented to you, and you took obviously full advantage of it by putting yourself to school in your house. And becoming really good at it. So, and you stuck with it. It's something that you still do. What do you find is one of the biggest challenges that you face with owning your own business?
It's hard to say. I think probably one of the biggest challenges that you think of from time to time is, every person who contacts me, it's like a job application that, it's like I'm putting in a job application to win their business. And they might have seen one of my sites, or they might have read my reviews. And so I maybe have a little bit of an advantage, but it's, it's not, you're not getting a steady paycheck. You're just getting taking on clients and getting jobs. And I stay as busy as I want to be. At this point, I've been doing it now for 15 years, and I want to keep a balance in life and actually be able to take advantage of living in band. And
Maybe that's the challenge.
that's the challenge. That's the challenge.
Yeah.
You're right. Lisa can answer this question for me.
Not playing all the time, but doing some work.
It's
I know she's a much happier person when the whole reason she wanted to have her own business, I think part of it is so that you could set your own schedule,
freedom
from home, and
Yeah.
have the freedom, whether it's your hours or your vacation.
Yeah.
And I know you're a much happier person when you actually set aside time to go hiking or skiing
Right.
or on a vacation.
I think-
instead of just head down work day after day after day.
Right. And that's a challenge, because I'm actually the sort of person, it's really easy for me to just sit in the office and work, like just work, and not take time out, and I think that's, if you allow yourself to do that, there's reasons we don't allow ourselves this like productivity thing, gotta always be productive. And so I don't maybe allow myself enough time. And even when I have time, I might feel guilty if it's a Wednesday and I'm out playing. So it's a challenge.
We get that. I mean, you guys know we work remote too, so we deal with the, balance between, hey, we got to spend time with our jobs and get our work done and do well with it, do a good job at it, but we also live in this very, very beautiful place, and we do have the freedom to go out and play on a Wednesday, so let's do that every once in a while too.
Right.
Well, thanks for sharing all of that, Laura, and it's really cool to hear more about your background and how you've gotten to where you are now. I will shift gears a bit and talk about Lisa and give Lisa a shot here. I'm very, very excited to hear more about your experience in the FBI. I actually could ask you a million questions about your experience being a D1 athlete, but I want to focus more on the career part for today, so we'll stick with that. But I wanted to ask, what started that? Like, one day, did you just wake up and decide that you wanted to be an FBI agent? Did you watch Silence of the Lambs and get inspired by Jodie Foster? Or, like, what made you want to be an FBI agent?
I don't know what year Silence of the Lambs came out. I don't know.
1991. I just looked it up.
91.
1991.
Okay, there you go. So I did love that movie, and I did want to be just like Jodie Foster.
There we go.
like
That must have been
everyone
it.
else. But actually, it didn't occur to me at that time that I would actually do that. I graduated from college in 1991. I was working at Levi Strauss in San Francisco in their employee wellness program with my exercise physiology degree. And I did that for 5 or 6 years. And during that time, which was quite a bit after Silence of the Lambs, I kind of got wind that a friend of mine had a sister who was applying to the FBI. And it had never occurred to me until that moment. I mean, I always thought that seemed like a cool thing, but law enforcement or a law or FBI federal employment, none of that had ever occurred to me. It's just in that moment, I think I was not super passionate about what I was doing, and I was getting pretty bored with it pretty early on in my career. And I remember just thinking, wait a minute, anybody can just apply to the FBI? It seemed like such a far-fetched idea, or something that was so far out there that it would never occurred to me. And so because this friend's sister had done it, I thought, well, I could apply to the FBI. So I did. And I just sort of did. I remember my parents and my sister and all my friends were kind of like, whatever, I'm sure you're going to be in the FBI. And I think I maybe felt that too, but I kind of thought, what's the harm in trying? I think so many people stop at that point and think it's this far-fetched dream and don't try for something like a job like that. And I literally just did it. I just applied, and it's a long process to get in, but every step of the way, I kept passing the various stages and tests, and was surprised every single time, but getting more and more excited about it, and ended up getting in and got the conditional letter of employment to go to Quantico, and quit my job at Levi's, and gave up my apartment in San Francisco and went and took the opportunity. Yeah, I always think about your dad when that stuff comes up, actually, because he was so big on that.
I think it also speaks, if I can just say, that seeing somebody who does, especially with something like the FBI, just all you needed was to see somebody who had done it.
Right.
And once you see somebody who has done it, you see that it's possible.
A real person.
A real person.
On the
Jodie
the
Foster.
movies, but actually a real person. You realize it's an attainable thing. Yeah. I think I just went for it and ended up getting in, and I think it was the best thing I ever did.
So yeah, from Levi's straight to Quantico, that's quite the change. And I'm glad that you brought up your parents, because we just met them or spent more time with them a couple weeks ago at that dinner party and got to know their personalities a little bit more. And so you mentioned them a little bit, but I am curious, like, really what their reaction was when not only you said, hey, I'm going to apply to the FBI, but hey, I'm going off to Quantico now for the next however long. I don't know how long that you're in Quantico for.
You know, it's interesting because I grew up with parents. My mom worked and had some really cool jobs, actually, especially for women. My dad worked. I think that I grew up with parents who made me feel like I could do anything, right? Like I never felt like there were any boundaries or any, there was nothing I couldn't do if that's what I wanted to do and I put my energy towards it. They made me feel like I could do anything, right? However, what's funny about that is when I got my volleyball scholarship, University of Florida, and when I went into the FBI, I think both times they were shocked. Like I think along the way, whether it was while being recruited for the volleyball scholarship or while applying for the FBI and making it through the stages, I think in the back of their minds, or at least they put out kind of to me like, oh, it's nice you're trying, honey, but, you know, this is pretty far-fetched kind of thing, which is surprising because they made me biggest cheerleaders. They made me feel like I could do anything. But I think they were shocked in both circumstances. I think they were elated, but I think they were really surprised. But that said, they were huge cheerleaders for me all along the way. But what was your initial question? I'm not even sure I answered it.
No, you did. My question was, what was your parents' reaction when, you know, not only you were telling them you were applying, but then you were heading off to Quantico? You know, could you sense any, even like nervousness from them or anything like that, or not really? I mean, knowing more about your mom, she also was a badass and worked for NASA and did stuff like that. So maybe not, but...
I think the, carrying a firearm part of it, I think made them nervous, and the potential for being in dangerous situations made them nervous. And I remember not thinking much about that. You know, while you're applying, they hammer into your head, you know, you do understand you're going to be carrying a gun and you could be in situations and this is what is expected of you. And I just remember going through it thinking, yeah, Jodie Foster did it. I can do it. You know, the whole But it's funny because I remember when it came to it, I remember my mom and dad driving me to the airport to get on the plane to go to Quantico. I had been so, like, not nonchalant, but excited about it and looking forward to it. And I remember in that moment when they dropped me off and I was going to get on the plane, I had practically a total breakdown. I remember, like, thinking, oh, my God, what am I doing? You know, in that moment, it hit me that I think I was scared at that moment.
For sure.
Going somewhere where you don't know anybody, you don't know what to expect. You wonder, can I do it? They give you this conditional letter of employment, and that's all based on if you pass everything that they threw at you at Quantico. You know, if you don't, they send you home and you've given up your job, your apartment, your everything. So I think I had a bit of a freak out in that moment. But once I got there and made friends and met my classmates and got into the groove of it, it was just exciting. I mean, it was exciting, and it was such a neat challenge that I think I just went with it, and I loved it.
Well, I actually did want to ask another question kind of about your parents. So because I feel like the more that I'm becoming an adult and having those relationships with my parents, I had a similar experience of, you can do whatever, you can do it. But then there's always that little bit of like, almost like they're preparing themselves maybe for if we don't make it so that they can help us, right? And so it kind of feels like that's what maybe your parents were doing, was like, just in case, we have to be ready to support her in case it doesn't happen, because you kept shooting for the stars, which they taught you to do, but there's always, I'm sure, those nerves, right?
And I think probably a lot of that for your parents and mine might be also that they don't want us they want us to be successful, and maybe they're a little bit afraid of, oh, it's great she wants to do this, but she'll be destroyed if she doesn't get in after putting this much energy. They don't want us to feel bad. I mean, it might be a little bit of that. They don't want us to experience disappointment, and maybe they thought likely we would. I don't know. Yeah, that's a good question. I feel like I had such good role models with my parents, and talk about sports. We all played sports. I think role models as far as strong female coaches in my life, I know, that made me feel, challenged me, right? And made you realize you could be pushed to the brink and you're going to make it, you're going to get through it, and just keep working through it. I think you learn a lot of lessons. You learn teamwork, you learn resilience. I think all of that played a part in my feeling like I could do these things,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So was Quantico one of the most difficult experiences you've ever had, or is that too extreme to say that?
It was difficult in that it was more stressful than difficult, because the thought of, by the time you go there and all your family and friends know you're going there and everybody's rooting for you, and you don't want to fail, right? And if you fail, literally you're out the job, you're home with, pretty much starting over. So the stress, I think, came from knowing that I'd better pass and make this work, right? Mm-hmm. Because you can get kicked out of Quantico. I think my class started with 50 special agent candidates and ended up with, 42. I think 8 people failed out, whether that was from academic, failing academic classes, or firearms, or physical fitness portion. You can fail out of Quantico. It's super intense. I was a little afraid. I've never been in the military, and I was a little bit afraid it might be a sort of a really regimented militaristic experience. And it wasn't that at all. They very much treat everybody like professionals. Everybody's had a career at that point, right? Everybody that's applying for the job. And they do treat everyone with respect and very professionally. And they want you to pass. With firearms, they're teaching you everything you need to know because they want you to pass. So, with all the academic classes, they're teaching the curriculum so that you can learn it and pass it. So it's a very supportive environment. And when you're there, you're out in the middle of nowhere, Virginia. You have nothing to do but study and work out and pass, right? I thought it was an incredible experience. I would highly recommend it, actually.
How many women were in your class, or in general in the FBI?
Yeah, there were 10 women in my 50-person class, and I think 8 of us made it through the entire process and ended up with a job in the FBI.
How many women are in?
I want to say it's only 18%-ish, 18 to 20%, they say. And I think they were saying that when I got in, and I don't think it's gotten any better. And they do try. They do a lot of work to hire a diverse group, but it's still, the majority of it is still your average 30-year-old white guy, right? I mean, that's just the way it is. But it's gotten a lot better as far as diversity. However, not that much better as far as the number of women in the FBI. In fact, we had friends over for dinner last night. One of them was also an FBI agent. She didn't spend her whole career in the FBI, but she got in 1984?
82, I think.
82?
Yeah.
And they only started allowing women to be special agents after J. Edgar Hoover passed away, because he wasn't having it. But in 73, so she was part of that really early on group of women that took on that challenge. And I feel like by the time I got in, it was normal to have women in the FBI. There still aren't enough women. at any given time on my squad of 10, I would have maybe one other woman on my squad at any given time. But because of what she went through and what the women in that first 10, 20 years went through, it actually was a relatively easy thing for me being a woman in the FBI, I would say.
I didn't know this until a couple weeks ago as well, but you mentioned, when 9/11 happened, you were on a plane to New York right away to be a part of the, helping in that situation. Obviously 9/11 being one of, if not the worst thing that's ever happened to this country. And so I don't necessarily have a direct question other than what was that experience?
Well, I feel
like?
lucky because I remember when it happened, we all wanted to be there. I was out in San Francisco at the time and clear across the country, and we all of us in the FBI, and probably most of us in general, felt helpless, like you wanted to do something, right? Mm-hmm. And they did pick a team of 8 from each division's evidence response team to go out. And, some people went right away. We actually went out in November, so it happened September, right? They started rotating teams through. We went out in November, and they kept sending teams through for, my gosh, I think could have been 2 years before all the debris had been processed for evidentiary reasons. But I remember feeling really lucky that I was able to go do something and actually be part of it. So yeah, they sent us out there, and we paired up with other teams from around the country. I think we were paired up with New Orleans and Mobile, Alabama, and we were assigned to the Staten Island landfill. And what they were doing at that time is there were thousands of law enforcement agencies out there, local, state, federal, right, processing, because there was so much debris at ground zero. Mm-hmm. But what we were assigned to in particular is they were putting the debris from the buildings from ground zero on barges and taking them over to the Staten Island landfill, which is called the Fresh Kills Landfill, which I've always kind of hated the name of that place. I'm not sure why it's named that. Mm-hmm. Brought it over there, and then we were essentially sifting through debris from the World Trade Center and pulling out anything that could identify a victim, whether it was teeth, bones, driver's license, anything that could identify somebody, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's what we did. We were working the night shift, and we were there for 12 to 14 hours, sifting. And while that happened, the second week we were there, and I don't know if you guys remember this, but there was also a case going on called Amerithrax, which was the anthrax scares that were happening through the U.S. Postal Service, New Jersey, New York. Mm-hmm. That was happening simultaneously during this time. And our second period there, we were supposed to be shifted over to work that part of the investigation. But while we were there, a plane crashed in the Rockaways. It sounds really convoluted, but a plane crashed, and they thought it was terrorist related. It ended up it wasn't, but they thought it was. And so my team was diverted to the Bellevue Hospital morgue, where we were then going through the 260 bodies taken from that plane to swab them for explosive residue and look for signs of a terrorist attack. So it was a harrowing time for sure in my career. I worked a lot of different crime scenes and across the board, but that definitely stands out as the most significant thing. It was a really interesting time to be in New York, especially as law enforcement, because the world, I don't know where were you guys during that time? How old were you during that time?
I was headed off to second grade. So.
Yeah, we were.
Okay. Yeah, so different perspective.
We were
but
10.
If you can just imagine, the entire world came to a halt. It was the biggest thing that had ever happened, and hopefully it's the biggest thing that ever happens on American soil, if we're lucky. But the whole country, it was kind of the opposite of the way things seemed in the past few years. The whole country came together. It was like there was never a more patriotic time certainly that I know of. I probably during World War I or II or something like that, where everybody's focus was on what's best for the country. How can we get past this? working together. It felt like a really unified time in our country. But being over there during that time, the way we were treated, they were so happy we were there and so happy we were helping. And it was just such a uplifting time to be in law enforcement, where these days it's not such an uplifting time to be in law enforcement. That was the complete opposite. It was special to be there during that time. Sad it was for such a bad reason. But yeah.
Yeah. I said second grade, but it was actually fifth grade. But
okay,
regardless. Oh yeah, I mean, I'm
you
sure
remember it, of course.
Yeah,
I remember what I was wearing. I remember like coming into
Yeah.
my mom's bedroom, you know, and she's just watching the TV. Like,
Yeah, so you
my
guys
dad
know.
was, my dad was actually in San Francisco about to fly to Florida and like about to get on a flight across the country, and they were like, "Go home,"
Yeah.
you know, and he rented a car and drove home. But
Yeah.
I'm
scary.
sure that experience that you have is something that you'll never forget. And like you said, I mean, you were an FBI agent for many years, but that experience alone probably really stands out, you know, to
for
you
sure.
within your
Yeah.
career. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, to shift gears a little bit, I wanted to talk about the both of you. And, you know, we've now talked about both of your careers and you've both done a lot. And, you know, I'm just curious to hear a little bit about how you guys have balanced that together. And, you know, it seems like you guys have a really awesome relationship, really healthy relationship. It's one that, you know, is a role model for us, like I said at the beginning of the podcast. And what you have found as either challenges or as something that is helpful in supporting each other in your guys' careers, you know, and in some of the changes that you've made and maybe even some of the moves that you've made as well. You know, what have you found hard and what have you found that is helpful?
It's funny because we don't really think about it very much, but I mean, you made the biggest shift because you retired early.
Well, I would say you made an equally big shift. You know, Laura was from a really small town. I mean, Murphy's, where she's from, was 3,000 people, right? She was very, very happy being in Murphy. She lived on 40 acres. She had good work. She had so many friends and family. And when we met, because of my career, we had to live in the city, right? I mean, you know, we lived in the suburbs of San Francisco, but to Laura, that
It
felt
was city
like
enough.
the big city, right? That was a big deal. You left everything, I think, to move. It's just 3 hours away, but it's a world of difference between the two places. So she basically dropped everything and moved to Livermore, and so that I could keep my career going. And I remember at that time telling her that someday we'll be able to move back out to the mountains or move back out of the city and live in a more, I don't know, beautiful, peaceful place with less people. So
So I had her sign that.
you didn't actually. You didn't
I
actually.
just held you to your word.
But I remember telling her, you know, when I'm 50, I could retire and we can live where we want. And
And actually, honestly, I came to really enjoy where we lived in the Bay Area. And as I established my business more in the Bay Area, and we had an incredible community there too, that thought became further away. I wasn't thinking, when are we going to move back to Murphy's, or that I really didn't think about that until we took a road trip up to Bend. And then it was like, okay, this is the spot.
yeah.
And fortunately, Lisa felt exactly the same way. I mean, we literally stood at Mirror Pond and we both said, oh, I could live here easily. And we just started thinking, how could we make it happen? And at that point, we were about 5 years away from Lisa being able to retire. And so that came into play because I don't think there's any other reason you would have retired.
Oh, no.
We wouldn't have retired and moved back.
Yeah,
up to Murphy.
they let you work as a special agent through 57. For some reason, at 57, they decide you're no longer able to do that job, which is ridiculous, but that's a whole other topic. But we knew at 50, we'd have the opportunity to go wherever we wanted to and wouldn't have to take my job into consideration. Yeah. I don't know. I think it's worked because we've just worked together kind of to make it work. I mean, you know, things have changed a lot. When I was working full time, I was gone all day, every day, and I was traveling a lot. And Laura got to work from home by herself in her quiet little oasis. So it rocked her world considerably when I did retire.
But I have to say that the only reason is because I have this thing when I work, I have to be working in complete silence. I can't have music on. I just am in my office completely focused.
And I was used to working in a land of cubicles with my squad mates all around me, talking over the cubicles and talking on the phone and collaborating. And that's how I really like to work. So it's hard for me to understand that. However,
You're going around.
yeah, I get that.
I honestly, at first, it was a little challenging because it was just the sound of somebody else being in the house and talking to the dogs and then coming into the office and saying, hey, do you want to do this or do you want to do that? I'm like, Christoph,
Not okay for her.
it just, yeah, for some reason,
But we've learned to
yeah.
work that out. But I think over the years, we've kind of just worked it out. I mean, I don't feel like anything's been one-sided necessarily. I think I'm lucky that you adapted and ended up liking living in the suburbs and we could have had a real problem.
yeah, I think you grow where you're planted. That
Not everyone can.
Yeah, but there's good in every place. I don't care if you dropped me in the middle of New York City. You know, there's beautiful things every single place in this world. So it's pretty easy.
But I think it's probably your ability to see that helped us get through that time, because there are people who couldn't have done that.
Right?
Yeah,
True.
Yeah.
And Laura, it sounds like you knowing that, maybe at some point you guys were going to move somewhere maybe a little bit smaller, a little bit quieter, a little bit more in nature, allowed you then to be like, okay, well, I'll totally embrace where I'm at now because I know that that's coming.
Yeah. That's true. And even in the course of that, my stopping longing for that, because I was growing and flourishing in this new community, which I never thought I would, live in the suburbs and love it. But I actually really did. It was great.
So we are going to kind of wrap up here, but before we do, I've been ending every episode where I have a guest on with a rapid fire round. Basically, this is 5 questions that I'm going to throw at you, and the goal is for you guys to answer, and you guys can each give your individual answer in 1 word to 1 sentence is the goal. If it's a little bit more than that, that's okay, but that's the goal. So I have 5 questions, and are you up for it? Are you ready?
Okay. This feels like all of a sudden it's like
Game on. Should we stretch?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, for you guys, for the record, when Christina asked me these, for at least 2 of them, I was like, oh my God, for like a minute and a half. So
Okay.
again,
Oh, no.
we can edit anything. It's fine.
Okay, good.
Okay.
Yep. And whoever has their answer first can answer first. So question number 1 is, what is something new happening in your life right now?
Well, we just purchased a travel trailer, and it's something that you only want 1 sentence. Travel trailer.
Horses. I'm going with horses.
Oh my God, that was funny. Okay.
That was perfect.
Number 2, what is something in your routine that you do not like doing, but you have to do?
Shoveling the recently.
Oh, yeah.
Laura, you're such a happy, positive person. You're like, I like everything that I do. So.
Not
Just
necessarily.
wait till it's the middle of her workday and you throw out something like, hey, do you think you might want to take the dogs for a walk?
It's like, no, I don't want to take the dogs
That's
for a walk.
her too. That's her too.
Could there be anything better than taking the dogs for a
And
walk?
then you have Miss Positive, and she uses that like, it would do your soul good to get away from that desk.
Oh my God, Lisa.
Just leave me alone.
I am you. But then every time we do get out of the house and we're out on a walk, Cora's like, oh, this
Thank
is
you.
amazing.
Thank you for
I
suggesting
needed
it.
this.
No,
Yes.
I'm literally attached to the couch. Like, I have grown into the couch when every time Christina's like, let's go on a walk, I'm like, I can't. I literally can't.
Okay, Laura, maybe your answer is dog walks then.
Right. No, I don't know. I mean, I would say that I would love work, well, no, I can't really say that work is something I don't want to do because I enjoy it. So no, I pass.
Okay. Fair. Okay. Number 3, what is something that you're grateful for right now?
Everything. I'm grateful every morning that I wake up and I look out, and I'm grateful for my family, which is Lisa and our doodles. I'm I'm grateful for everything. I feel like I'm at one of the best places that I've ever been, and I've always been in a good place in life. So that's
Well, I think to have all that intact and to have it here in Bend, Oregon, I'm grateful for that.
Yes, us too. Okay, number 4. What does success look like to you?
When I hear of success, I don't think of it as like career success or fiscal success or anything like that. Success for me is feeling peaceful and balanced and not stressed out in any way. That's success. If you can actually exist in the world and have that, have no stress, that's success for me.
No. I think if you're happy, if you're content with what you have got and are not constantly seeking other things, I think that feels like success.
Yeah, I would agree with that. All right, and then last one, then you guys are off the hook, is what is one piece of advice you would give your younger self?
Don't worry so much.
I like that one.
Things turn out the way they're supposed to. Just go for it and do your best and don't worry so much.
Boy, I would have a lot for my younger self because I don't think I actually really started figuring myself out until my mid-30s. So just keep looking for opportunities and take every opportunity. And that's what I've done. But I think I would like to hear that as a young person.
Well, I want to say thank you to both you so much for being on the Making Changes, Breaking Barriers podcast. I really appreciate it. Obviously, we're friends and normally hanging out in a lot less maybe stressful situations than recording a podcast episode. So I really appreciate you guys taking the time to do this. And you too, Cora, thank you for being on another episode. I'm probably going to rope you into many more. So just prepare yourself. But yeah, thank you guys so much.
Thank you for having us. That was fun.
Of course. So changing your path will not be easy. It will be challenging. I'll say that over and over again, but it will be worth it. So I ask that you do a self-check today. Are you on your path up your mountain? And if not, what path are you on?